If you want to bore somebody to tears, you give them the facts. If you want to engage somebody, you tell them a story.
Brian Miller, the connection magician, is a magician turned top-rated international speaker on human connection, perspective, and understanding. Brian's TED Talk, How to Magically Connect to Anyone, has been viewed 3.6 million times worldwide.
The responses were amazing. People were freaking out. They were more emotional after these talks than they had ever been over my magic shows.
Brian's unique blend of magic, message, and method makes him a sought-after figure in various sectors, inspiring a revolution in human connection.
This is a way to leverage everything I've learned as a magician, the ability to captivate an audience, to keep their attention, rise and fall of emotion, all these things you learn as an entertainer.
In the realm of public speaking, Brian is the founder of Conquer the Red Dot, a renowned coaching firm that empowers experts and leaders to deliver impactful talks at TED-style conferences. He also founded Clarity Up Consulting.
In business, the way perspective taking is so valuable is I need to understand the point of view that you are coming from. I need to understand the way you see the world, those things we talked about earlier. And that's how it works.
I'm your host, Gabe Marusca with the Nomad Solopreneur Show. And a couple of months ago, I stumbled upon Brian's TED Talk. And it was this particular phrase that stood inside my brain, and I was like, I had to get Brian on the show because this guy can teach us so many things. And that phrase was, everyone deserves to be heard, understood, and valued. And as we all know, everything in our lives is thanks to human connection. If you want to connect better with others, you don't want to miss this episode. Enjoy. Before you walk on that stage, did you have any idea how popular that presentation will be?
I had no freaking idea. In 2015, I was invited to give a TEDx talk at a high school in Connecticut. And it was run by teenagers. And I mean, 16-year-olds were running this conference top down, which you can tell from the production quality. And they did the best they could, but they were kids. And this was the first time this high school was hosting a TEDx conference. And I had no grand desire. I didn't want to be a speaker. I didn't even speak. I thought speakers were cheesy. I thought they were all motivational nonsense. And I was a full-time magician. This was my career. I was in year 9 or 10 at that point of being a full-time magician and thought that would be the rest of my life. And when I got invited through some mutual contacts to this local TEDx conference, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Great, that sounds cool. I like TED Talks. Those are cool. I had no real ambitions here. And so over the few months prepping for it and figuring out what the topic would be and going through that whole process, I basically ended up in a conversation with my manager, Scott, who was my manager when I was a magician, and he has transitioned with me and is still, I started working with him when I was a kid, and who barely was good at card tricks. And he and I talked, and we were hoping, this was the pipe dream, we were hoping it would get 10,000 views. That was the dream. The dream was 10,000 views. We thought, well, if it gets 10,000 views, that will be legitimate enough that we could increase my rates as a corporate magician by $500. Like, I was trying to go from $1,500 as a corporate magician, like local corporate magician, to $2,000. That was the goal. So, and it didn't initially pop off. This is the crazy thing. When the talk hit YouTube, the first day, I just emailed it to everybody in my life. I posted on every platform, and it got about 1,200 views in the first week and then stopped cold. 1,200 views, just over 1,000 views, stopped cold, and it stayed there for about 2 weeks. And I thought that was it. I was like, all right, gave it my best shot. I'm proud of it, and back to card tricks. Let's get just back to work. And then I'm in an airport with my then fiance, who's now my wife, Lindsay. We're at the airport. We're going to fly down to West Palm Beach, Florida, to visit my grandparents for the weekend, which we did a couple of times a year back then. And we're at the airport waiting for the flight, and she says, "You didn't tell me your talk hit 2,000 views." And I'm like, what? And I opened up YouTube, and it was at 2,000 views. And by the time we landed 2.5 hours later, it was at 4,000 views. And by the end of that weekend, at the flight back, it was at 10,000 views. It was at 100,000 within the end of the month, 1 million within 6 months, and 2 million in the first year. And now it has whatever, 3.6 million views. I had no idea. I had no idea. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's interesting how algorithm works. That's why it's so important to focus on the things that we can control. And speaking of that, you are an amazing magician from what I could tell from that TED Talk. But now you're not anymore. You're still entertaining people on stage, but in a different way. You're helping them connect. How that transition happened?
That transition happened like everything else in my life by accident, really. I mean, I've been saying this forever when people ask me, I'm kind of like on my fourth career already in the span of just under 20 years of working. And I kind of just do whatever's next. Whatever makes sense, that's what I do. And so when the talk went viral like that, there was this moment where I was like, oh, like there are people all over the world, like not just like some people, but like millions of people who are finding this valuable and sharing it. And it was a talk. I used a little bit of magic in it, but a very small amount, 2 quick tricks I used in it to use some examples, make it fun. But it's like people were finding this valuable. And I was starting to get calls from organizations around the world to come, basically, can you come give your TED talk, but for an hour? And, and I was like, sure. Like I had no idea. Like I was like, not really, but you're offering me a lot of money, so I'm going to say yes. So I started saying yes to these opportunities. And then I felt like an imposter because I didn't know. I wasn't an expert on perspective taking, human connection, the stuff that was in my talk. That was just my personal story. So I started studying everything I could study to learn about this stuff, talking to experts, listening to podcasts, reading books, just to not look like an idiot at the events where people had hired me and flown me across the world first class. I was like, what the hell is going on? And at some point, what I realized is those talks kept going well. The responses were amazing. People were freaking out. They were more emotional after these talks than they had ever been over my magic shows. The reaction to the talks were bigger than the best magic shows I had ever done. And I was like, okay, this is a way to leverage everything I've learned as a magician, the ability to captivate an audience, to keep their attention, rise and fall of emotion, all these things you learn as an entertainer. I get to use those skills, but instead of doing something that is ultimately superficial, which I might have just pissed off all my magician friends by saying that, but magic it's fun, it's great, but it's fleeting. We can also watch cat videos and we can watch movies. There's lots of ways to be entertained. But I can take those skills as an entertainer and use it to deliver something that people can use, that they can take with them, that can help transform the way they think about their relationships and the way they engage with their lives. That felt like just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So it was like I was going 100 miles an hour as a magician towards a brick wall. And then out of nowhere, there was, an off-ramp to speak on human connection. I just went, well, we're going that way. And I just took it.
Brilliant, especially because if someone looks at your TED Talk, they might say, Brian, it's a brilliant storyteller. And I think it's a huge differentiator between a classic magician that telling stories with the act itself. But you did it at a different level. It's almost like a case study in storytelling because you reveal how you met that couple, that situation, and you don't tell anything until the end. And people stay glued to the screen in this case, or in the stage, admiring you going through that. How much in your speaking career storytelling influenced your revenue at the end of the day? Because from a $200 magician, I heard you charge around 20,000 per keynote.
Yeah, my keynotes are in the kind of $15,000 to $20,000 range. If we're going to speak openly, the prices are listed publicly. You can go see me on Speakers Bureau's websites and stuff. So the question is, how much did storytelling affect essentially my ability to be successful in business, like as a speaker and ultimately in revenue?
Yes, correct.
One of my dearest friends and colleagues is Francisco Mafuz. He's a storytelling expert out of Barcelona, and he's also one of my licensed coaches now in some of my programs. And storytelling experts like Francisco will wax poetic, obviously, about the power of storytelling. I think it's really simple. I think if you want to bore somebody to tears, you give them the facts. If you want to engage somebody, you tell them a story. And that's it. I think we all know in our own experiences that facts, figures, studies, statistics don't actually work. And if you want to know that they don't work, try to convince somebody who's afraid of flying not to be afraid of flying by showing them how safe flying is. Because it's so safe, it's ridiculous. Flying compared to driving is so safe, it's a wonder we drive at all. Driving is so dangerous, so dangerous. Show somebody who's afraid of flying the statistics on how safe it is and try to convince them not to be afraid of flying. It will not work. And it won't work because the story in their head about falling from the sky in a burning plane is way too powerful. And the story about how often they've driven in their life and been fine is also way too powerful. Stories that we tell each other are important, but even more so, the stories that the world tells us, politicians tell us, companies tell us, marketers tell us, culture, our parents, our communities tell us, those are powerful. And the stories we tell ourselves are crazy powerful. And so I think story is the best vehicle we have for real change. And it doesn't need to be highfalutin. It doesn't need to be complex, and it doesn't need to be Shakespeare. You can just tell people what happened. And as long as it's got three things, it's a story: before, transformation, after. As long as it has a before, transformation, and an after, something was, then something changed, and here's what's different now that it changed. Those three things are a story. I was hungry, so I ate an apple, and now I feel better. It's not a great story, but it is a story. So we don't need to make it too complicated.
Absolutely. And I love the simplicity of that. And as well, the fact that it all boils down to human connection and understanding human emotions, because otherwise it's almost impossible to tell a story. As you well said, if you don't connect to your audience, they won't listen. And how do you make sure before booking a big speaking deal or before doing a workshop like you did, the one I attended in December, which was absolutely brilliant on building a keynote, how do you make sure your message will connect to basically an audience that at that point in time you don't know?
So we connect with people over values and beliefs. We don't connect with people over superficial designators. We act as if we do. When we meet somebody, we say, "What do you do?" It's the world's worst question because nobody actually wants to answer that question. Nobody cares about the answer when they get it. Say, "What do you do?" They go, "I'm an accountant." I'm an accountant. And you're like, cool. Nothing happens when you ask someone what they do. What happens though, if you say, "What do you do?" They say, "I'm an accountant." And I say, "Well, what do you love about being an accountant?" They might say, "Well, what I really love is," and then they start telling you some story about when they were a kid and their family was struggling with money and they realized that if you understood finances, they might tell you something, right? And they say, "That's what I love about being an accountant, helping people make sure that they can save for their future, or that they can send their kids, whatever." Now they're talking about what they believe in, what they value. And I can connect with you over that because I might not care at all about being an accountant, but I might also care deeply about providing a safe future for my family. We can connect over that. So similarly, audiences are just a group of people. We look at an audience as if it's a thing, like an audience. It's the audience. It's not. It's a bunch of individuals. It's a bunch of people. Just like there's no such thing as a company. There's just a bunch of people. Right? And so when I think about my audience, what I'm thinking about is the people that are in the seats. Is there something that they either believe deeply that they need to break, a belief that they need to break in order to take action on what I want them to do? Is there something that they fear deeply that that fear needs to be assuaged in order for them to take action? Is there something they want deeply, something they really want, that they know that they want, not something I think they need, something they know that they want that I can speak to? Or is there a struggle or a problem they're having getting what they want that I can speak to? These are like the 4 different things I think about when it comes to connecting with an audience. And I build my presentations up from at least one of those, if not all of them. Over the course of a keynote, I'll probably hit all of them. I'll speak to their beliefs, I'll speak to their fears, I'll speak to their wants, and I'll speak to their problems. And so I'm looking for, though, at least one of those things as the premise of my talk, because if I build the talk from one of those as a premise, I've got their engagement. And I've got their engagement because it's something they already care about that has nothing to do with me. And that is what connection feels like.
Yeah, true. And this applies to so many parts of our life. And of course, since this is a business podcast, this is easy to apply in business. Like literally from if you're on social media or you have a website or you attract your target audience by attending live events and such. Even at a live event, for example, there is a networking part to it. And in that, if you can connect in those few seconds that you present yourself and start listening to what the other person has to say, you can easily find values that are common and getting from there and start building that connection and that relationship. And same apply with your copy on your website, on your social media. There's no better way to connect with your audience and make them feel understood. And speaking of that, because I feel like it's sometimes the hardest way to make this gap between your beliefs and others. And you touching on your TED Talk on perspective between you and those that you're talking to. How can you apply that in almost every business setting instead of just listening?
You need to listen in order to make people feel heard. I mean, so starting with just listening. I mean, we could go on forever about the value of listening. It's one of those things that people intuitively understand, but just find it very difficult to do, which is actually why introverts are actually better at connecting with people than extroverts are, contrary to popular belief. We assume extroverts are great connectors, but extroverts are mostly so excited about their own opinions that they spend so much time talking, they don't listen to anybody. Introverts have a different problem. Introverts are so good at listening to what other people have to say and making them feel understood. They forget to actually contribute their end of the conversation, to actually say what they think, which means the person they're trying to connect with can't feel connected with them because they don't know what you value as the introvert, right? So there's that problem. In business, the way perspective taking is so valuable is I need to understand the point of view that you are coming from. I need to understand the way you see the world, those things we talked about earlier, beliefs, fears, wants, and problems. I need to know that because unless I understand those things and can use the language that says to you and quickly, business happens fast these days. There's not a lot of time. You build websites. You tell me, what do people have on average on a landing page? How long do they spend before they bounce on a landing page now? Is it under 3 seconds, 2 seconds?
Less than 5 seconds.
And in such a quick span of time, you need a stranger, probably, someone who's a stranger or close to it, to realize that you get them. You essentially need to do empathy, but without even being there. If we're talking about copy, you're not there. And so if you're not understanding the perspective of your audience, your ideal customer, your ideal client, whoever it is, if you don't understand that, you cannot talk to them in a way that makes them want to listen, right? There's two sides to it. One of my heroes is Julian Treasure. He's given 5 TED Talks, not like at a high school like I did. He's in 5 TED Talks. They're like 80 million views, impossible. And he's an expert in sound and communication. And he was on my podcast a couple of years ago, and it was a huge honor. And he said, people think that listening is basically linear, like I talk, you listen. He said, but that's not, it's circular. He said, the way that I speak affects the way you listen. The way you listen affects the way I speak, and round we go. And so I need to listen to you in order to know how to talk to you. And I need to talk to you in a way that makes you want to listen. And I want to listen to you in a way that makes you want to talk. And that's how it works.
That's the thing, like once you made that leap and you make a circular connection with someone and listen in the same time you talk, you ask questions, you arrive at the point that you can build relationships. And we all know that at the end of the day, speaking of business, probably every single dime we make in our lifetime is thanks to others. Of course, we might do the work, we improve our skills and so on and so forth. But if someone else is not willing to connect with us at the business level or as a partner or whatever, we don't make any money. And I feel it's one of those underrated skills that we have to build in order to be successful, not only in life, but in business as well. And how do you build these skills?
Skills to up-level your ability to connect with people. All right. First is get better at asking interesting questions. This is a very hard thing to do. People find it very difficult to ask interesting questions.
Tell me about it.
Even when they find the person interesting. Sometimes, you say, hey, what do you do? And they say, I'm a marine biologist. And you might be like, that's cool, right? Or they say, I'm a NASA engineer. And you're like, that's cool. And then your brain is, I don't know anything about being a NASA engineer. I don't know anything about being a rocket engineer. And then you just go blank. You have no idea what question to ask. So there are a couple of easy questions that you can always ask. My favorite one is, what do you love about that? Whatever they just told you, oh, I'm a, rocket ship engineer. What do you love about being a rocket ship engineer? Immediately, they're going to get below the superficial, which was, here's my job title, and they're going to start talking to you about something they care about, right? And so that's the first thing is find ways to ask more interesting follow-up questions. And then the second skill I would say is related to that, which is practice the skill of reflective listening. Reflective listening is one of those things that almost everybody in corporate America has been trained on. When I ask audiences who's ever had reflective listening training, almost every hand goes up. When I say who is able to come up on stage and teach us how to do it right now, every hand goes down. We've all had the training. No one knows how to do it. Reflective listening is the ability to paraphrase back to someone something that they just said in your words, but from their perspective. That's the key. Your words, their perspective, which means you have to listen. In order to do that, you cannot listen with a response in mind. If while they're talking, you're thinking, oh, I have a funny story related to that I want to tell them, or I have a point I want to make about that, or I disagree and I'm going to tell them why. As soon as you do that, you're out of the conversation. You're out of their side and back on your side, and you're not really hearing them anymore, which means you cannot paraphrase what they just said because you stopped paying attention. And so by practicing the skill of reflective listening, you force yourself to stay in their perspective while they're talking, which means asking interesting follow-up questions gets easier. One of the reasons we struggle with interesting follow-up questions is we actually aren't listening very well, right? So, okay, those are two things. So ask interesting follow-up questions. 2, practice reflective listening. These are both things that are simple. They're just not easy, right? They're very hard to do. Those are 2 things. Third thing I would say right off the bat is get better at remembering and using people's names. There's a chapter in my book called The Art and Importance of Remembering Names. It was the last chapter I wrote for the book, and I only wrote it because my editor said, we need 10 more pages to flesh out this book. I was like done with the book. She goes, send me something. I'm like, send you what? She goes, I don't know, anything, an extra chapter. I was like, I don't, I'd been writing for 3 years, and I was just like, whatever. I just whipped up this nonsense chapter that I thought was just a throwaway chapter on remembering names because my mom had always said to me, God, you are so good. You remember everybody's name. It's amazing. And I thought, well, how do I do that? And I wrote it all out. That is like the chapter I get asked about more than any other chapter from that book. This throwaway thing I wrote at the last minute. So many people are like, that chapter on remembering names was so useful. I struggle with that so much. Here's a few tips for you by the way, Gabe, let me ask you, do you struggle with remembering names?
Yes, I used to do that. Lately, I started applying something by repeating the name back at them to make sure I pronounce it correctly and so on. That's one trick.
Right. So that's usually the one people have heard of, which is a great trick. Is after you ask for somebody's name and they say Gabe and you say, Gabe, it's nice to meet you. You repeat it back. I actually recommend you hit it 3 times in the span of 8 seconds after somebody gives it to you. So I go further than that. I usually, if I say, what's your name?
Gabe.
Nice to meet you, Gabe. Gabe, let me ask you a question. So here's how that works. It's 3 times. They say their name, you go Gabe, and I go Gabe. The first one is me making sure I heard you. And they nod or they say, yeah. And I go, it's nice to meet you, Gabe. So that's me actually responding to your initial name. I've hit it twice now and it feels totally natural. Gabe, it's nice to meet you, Gabe. That feels totally natural. That is not hard to do. And you go for the third one by then asking them the first question you're going to ask them and starting with their name. Gabe, let me ask you a question. And then you ask your first question. So it's Gabe. Nice to meet you, Gabe. Gabe, let me ask you a question. Believe it or not, in real conversation, if you're the receiver, the listener, this feels very natural. It does not feel weird at all. It only feels weird to you if you've never done it before, if you're the one doing it. It People love hearing their name. It's like the sweetest sound in the world, right? Because we've heard it since birth. Okay, so there's the repeating it system, but there's also other ways you can do it. You can ask people to spell their name. I used to say only do this if it's a name that actually could have multiple spellings, but these days, it's actually people spell their names however they want to these days. And different cultures, different languages. You might say Gabe, but because I hear in your voice that you're probably not American, you might be a different spelling. I might not know. So I'd say, Gabe, how do you spell your name? And you might just go Gabe, and I would say, oh, Gabe, just like the normal way, the way I thought it was. And you'd laugh, and I would say, great. When I do that, Gabe, my brain visually sees the letters go across like I was writing them. That's another modality for me to remember it. So you can ask them for the spelling. And here's my favorite way. Write it down. As soon as somebody walks away, so I have an app in my phone called People I've Met. Or it's not an app. It's in my notes folder. In my notes app, there's a folder called People I've Met. As soon as somebody walks away after the first time I met them, I put their name down and any quick bullet points, any identifying characteristics, anything they mentioned that was particularly interesting, kids, hobbies, values, whatever. I jot that down and then I put it back in my pocket. Often that is enough to jog your memory when you see them again, because it's another modality, especially if you're stacking these. You repeated it, you asked for their spelling, you wrote it down. And if you do bump into them 6 months later, 8 months later, a year, it's been a long time, and you don't actually remember their name, because you wrote it down, you remember somewhere in there, if you open up that folder and you just start scrolling real quick, your eye will remember. Your brain will trigger when you see it, and you can quickly remember their name and a little bit about them. So when you walk up to them, you remember their name. You say, oh, Gabe, right? And they're like, yeah. They'll freak out. People can't believe it. They can't believe it. Like in and of itself, remembering somebody's name makes people feel connected with you because it's so rare.
Exactly. The last one, it's such an underrated thing to actually build a connection, like a powerful connection with someone. That's your CRM right there. Building that CRM inside the Note app and jotting that down in that moment. You never know what specific thing that person said might be helpful for you or for them in the future. And speaking of apps, I know that you're not officially a solopreneur, and I will challenge you to run your business as a solopreneur. But before that, I want to ask you, what kind of tools are you using on a daily basis, not with your team or contractors or so on, in order to make your business work?
Let's see. Tech tools, apps that I'm using on a regular basis that are not specifically for the team or for the business, but they're for me to do my work.
Yeah.
I am still using Evernote. I've been using I went away from it for a while and just went to the native Notes app on my phone, and then started to miss the functionality of being able to just on any machine. Now that there's a desktop here, there's a laptop here, there's an iPad somewhere else, I've got 2 different phones. Like I just missed the ability to pull up my thoughts from anywhere, whatever I had. So I use Evernote and I use the tagging, like the hashtag or whatever, like tagging each note in different categories. I think it's an underappreciated thing. So I use that. This is going to be the most boring answer. I use the Google Calendar app probably more than almost anything. I use it constantly because I time block. I can't even get into my own calendar without making an appointment with myself anymore. If I need an hour to write a blog, it's not like I just sit down and write a blog. I have to make an appointment with myself like I would make an appointment with anybody, and it goes in my calendar as an actual appointment that's blocked off. And when that shows up, I'm like, oh, it's an appointment with me to write my blog. And then I have an hour, and that's it. It's got to get done, because at the end of that hour, I've got another thing. There's something else on my calendar. And so I think people worry that structure confines us. I think structure liberates us. I think when you have structure, it reduces the option paralysis problem of there's so many things I could do, I could read, I could listen to, I could work on, I could talk about. And it goes, nope, you're living in this little segment of life for the next hour. And you go, great, I don't have to think about all that other stuff. I just have to do the thing that's on my calendar. So I use that. And I mean, these days, ChatGPT, and related AI apps, but for me, mostly it's still ChatGPT. I was a beta user back when it very first started. Within 2 weeks of using it, when it first became public, it was something I was teaching my team. Within a month, it was built into the standard operating procedures of our company. I mean, in the span of a month, it went from never existed to don't know how I would run my life or business without it. It was scary how fast it was. So I use GPT constantly. And now that it has the talk voice feature, it's my best thing because I spent a lot of time in rental cars driving from airports for a couple of hours to wherever the event is, the gig, whatever, when I'm speaking and stuff. And oh man, instead of that being just quote unquote wasted time, and I'm sure the work-life balance people will be annoyed at hearing this, but I hate dead time like that. I hate it. So if I'm driving now, I can bring up on ChatGPT the voice, the talk, where you can tell it what voice and what personality you want it to have and all this stuff. And I just out loud, hands-free, while I'm 2 hands on the steering wheel, talk back and forth like a thought partner, like a business coach, and then at the end of it, when I'm all done, it's there as a text transcription in the chat that I can follow up on. I can continue later. I can whatever I need to do with it. And that has taken my dead time of travel and turning it into me being able to out loud work through ideas with a digital thought partner. Oh, bow down to the robot overlords. If this is the beginning of the end, we're going out big. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that use case. Using as a thought partner, I never thought about it.
It's really good. It responds quickly in real time with a real voice. It's very scary, obviously, and it brings up all kinds of questions for the context around this, which is, what do I speak on? What do I consult on? Human connection. It brings up all kinds of weird questions about that, but it is just beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, true. And speaking of human connection and your consulting business, I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, you have 2 sides of it. One for the TED Talk and one for organizations. And you run with multiple team members, you have contractors, part-time, full-time, and a bunch of other people that help you do all these things. How you'll use maybe even ChatGPT or other ways in order to work only with contractors at max, not full-time employees, and being able to run your business from anywhere in the world, since, we are called the Nomad Solopreneur Show.
No, so here's the thing. So I was a freelancer, what you might call now a solopreneur, for most of my career. My whole time I was a magician. It was just me. I had a manager and an agent and still have them, but they do what they do. They don't work for me. I don't work for them. It's a beneficial relationship. And that was really useful when I was a young magician because they had all the contacts to events and organizers that I didn't have, and they had a relationship with them, and et cetera. They get a commission when they book me. And that's all it is. They get a commission when they book me. So I was a solopreneur for a long time. The first full-time hire, it was a VA, firstly. It wasn't full-time. Okay, so the first time I hired somebody, it was a VA as a personal assistant for 5 hours a week. And they were the worst. It was terrible. It was a terrible working relationship. They didn't seem to understand my business. They didn't whatever. And so I was going to swear off that whole thing. I was like, I confirmed everything I thought. It's got to be me all the way. I'm just going to work 90 hours a week and, run into a brick wall at some point. And then I decided to try it again and went out looking for a VA again and hired someone, at the time, young lady named Sheikh. And she was so good. She didn't know how to do anything, but she learned immediately. She was like out of high school, never went to college, just had an open mind, willing to learn. And so I would say, here's something I want to do. And she would go, I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to find out. And she'd come back 2 hours later and go, I read like 17 articles. I found a free course. I took a course. I watched 3 YouTube videos and figured it out. And here it is. And I was like, you are fantastic. So eventually I brought Sheikh on full time, and she's been with me ever since. And she's now the executive assistant of my company. She is rock solid. Could I run my business without her? Could I replace her with AI tools? I mean, yeah, probably. Technically, she manages my inbox. She does scheduling. She yells at me when I overbook myself. Could I do that with AI? Sure. She has become invaluable to me. And it's not that I couldn't run my business without her. Of course I could. My business is greatly more fun with her. And I also had a kid. I have a 3.5-year-old now. And so all those extra 70, 80, 90 hours a week, all those extra hours, when I had a kid, I promised my wife I'd work a normal 40 hours. That's it. I'm done at 5 and I don't work weekends. Well, if you want to do big stuff, sometimes you need to work outside of 40 hours a week. And I want to do big stuff. And I also want to have a family. So she was very beneficial. The only other full-time hire that I have, just so you have a picture, because I know you're such a big fan, obviously, of the solopreneur thing, is my graphic designer. I obviously could have her as a contractor. I'm sure she doesn't work 40 hours a week for me. That was never the idea. The reason she's full-time is because I told her, I don't need you filling the time with nonsense work. If you only have 10 hours of work to do this week, just work 10 hours and then just be around in case I need you. What I wanted was somebody who was absolutely going to respond immediately and who knew my business inside and out and was not distracted by other people's businesses. That was useful to me. So I made her full-time, even though she doesn't work the full-time hours. She just works for me. So does that at least give you a better picture of like why I have 2 full-time employees?
Absolutely.
To the original question of what tools do you use in order to essentially run a solopreneur business and only, with contractors and stuff like this. I mean, for me, the main thing is what we've been talking about. It's being connected with people over values and beliefs. The reason that I can have contractors that work so well for me and not have to bring them in full time, or because I really don't want the responsibility of paying for people's entire lives and their families. And it's hard enough being a solopreneur. It's hard enough the responsibility and the pressure to provide for your own family and your own life and your own retirement, your own kids' stuff. To have that for other people too, it's brutal. And so the contractors that I work with, like my certified coaches and people like that, I'm able to work with them because I explicitly told them I want them to continue running their own businesses with their own personal brands. I want you doing you. I said, I want you working with us because you have a successful business of your own, personal brand, your own opinions, your own beliefs, your own thought leadership. And then when you are working in the capacity of like you're licensed to deliver one of our specific programs, then I want you bringing all that cool stuff you already do and you're already known for just into my program's framework that I built, my IP. So just using my IP and doing it in their way. And so the answer to your question is the way I've been able to do that is by obsessing over frameworks and systems instead of tactics. So I have this whole thing where I think so many people in business, especially freelancers and solopreneurs, are too obsessed with tactics, which are the very specific nitty-gritty ways to use certain tools. It's, the problem is they change all the time. The tech changes, the world changes, and tactics don't apply broadly. They only apply in very narrow circumstances to one app or one social network or one industry. And then you go take a tactic that worked in law firms and you try to bring it to a healthcare facility and it doesn't work anymore. So instead, I like frameworks. I like ways of thinking through problems. I like ways of solving problems, ways of discovering problems, right? Things like that. And so if I can build a framework and hand it to somebody who's a great tactician, they can take that framework and apply it and use the tactics that are required of that particular client or industry or application or whatever it is. But when the tactics change, they just use different tactics and apply the same framework. The frameworks scale, and so I can bring in contractors, show them the framework, teach it to them in an hour or two, tell them, ping me with any questions as you start doing the work, and just let them start doing the work. I train a certified coach in 3 hours. I jump on for 3 hours, I train them through the whole thing, I say, you're good, they're good, and I send them the first client. They're good. They're already an expert in what they do. They've got my framework now to work through, and they can ping me the first time or two for any quick questions, and it works great.
If it's something that intrigues me every single time when I talk with someone that has a business, it's one single question. Why are you doing this?
The why question. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, and funny enough, I never asked it before.
It's a hard question. Why am I doing it? Well, I could give you the marketing answer. I could say, because I believe that everyone deserves to feel heard, understood, and valued. And that is true. I mean, it's not just my tagline, it's true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. I mean, solopreneurship is hard. It's really hard. Nobody does it because it's easy. No, you know what I mean? So I do believe, I believe everyone deserves to feel heard, understood, and valued. And I'm on a mission to create that world as best as I can through many different channels, working with corporations, but also working with individuals, speakers, that kind of thing. But why I'm doing what I'm doing at a meta level, I've been self-employed. I've never had a job. When I was 16, I worked at McDonald's for about a year over that grill with all the grease. And I quit McDonald's the day I realized I could make more money doing card tricks for 2 hours than I was making in a week over that hot grill at McDonald's. Quit McDonald's, became a magician. I've been self-employed ever since. I was a magician, and a speaker, and then a coach and a consultant. And so my why really ultimately is I want to work on the projects that I find valuable. And if I'm a solopreneur, I choose my projects, I choose my clients. I don't have to do anything. If I'm ever, that's what I've told my wife before. I said, if I'm ever upset about something at work for longer than a week or something, like the length of just an annoying project, like something has come up, whatever. If I'm upset with something for longer than that, smack me. You know what I mean? Because I chose the project. I chose the client, and so that's also given me the freedom to fire clients. I have fired clients right in the middle of contract. I did it last year. Last year, I let go of I don't know, $40,000, $50,000 worth of contracts that they would have paid me out by the end because I wasn't enjoying the work. I wasn't enjoying the project. I wasn't looking forward to the sessions. And then I went, what the hell am I doing? I work for myself. I chose the client. So it's also the advice that, I got from Seth Godin years ago, father of modern marketing, a hero of mine, and has become a friend and a mentor in many ways. Seth said to me years ago when I was struggling with this kind of stuff, when I was struggling to charge what I wanted to charge for work, I couldn't quite get the fees I wanted. He said, you're self-employed. You get to choose your clients. Why choose clients who can't afford your fees? And it broke my brain. It broke my brain. He said, there's so many obstacles to getting work as a freelancer. Why make money one of them? At least choose clients that can afford your fees. And then there's probably 17 other obstacles you got to deal with, but at least don't deal with that one. And I was like, that's right. So when people ask me, how do I raise my fees? I'm like, talk to different people. Talk to people who can afford your fees. At least get rid of that one. It's so silly to talk to people who can't afford your fees. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the why question the way you were maybe expecting, but there's my mission of the business why. Everyone deserves to feel heard, understood, and valued. But my personal why do I run a business like this? Why? I want to choose my projects.
Yeah, and I think it all boils down to that, the value of freedom, the freedom of choice, and you're in control at this point. And I think if anyone want to take a big takeaway from this, probably solopreneurship is all about that, the freedom to choose. You can even choose to build a huge business out of solopreneurship and go hire a lot of employees and so on. And for those that connect with your values and want to work with you, and they don't check the show notes, why not? Because the links will be there, But if they don't, tell them where they can connect with you.
Yeah, so I think we focused mostly on kind of human connection in this conversation. If you go to connectwithanyone.com, you will get my most popular resource, which is a PDF ebook called 7 Ways to Talk to Anyone Without Looking Like an Idiot. It's actually useful. It's funny, but it's actually useful. And so connectwithanyone.com, if you toss your name and email into there, you'll get that. And that puts you on my blog newsletter. There are no sales pitches on the blog. I have nothing to sell you. I have a book. It's on Amazon. It's $17. If you buy it, I get a couple of cents. I don't know, like whatever Bezos gives me. Like there's nothing. I have nothing to sell you in that capacity. If at some point you decide you want to stay connected and find me in the channels, I'm very easy to get a hold of. But I would start with connectwithanyone.com.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll put all the other links to Brian working, especially to TED Talk, because it's brilliant, in the show notes. And to wrap things up, please suggest to our listener one thing they can do in less than 1 week to start building better connections. Let's make it even easier. if they use a platform like LinkedIn to connect with people, what will be the easiest way to build better connection?
Yeah, if you're using a platform like LinkedIn, people get wrapped up thinking that they need to be posting stuff all the time. They're like, what do I post? And no, sure, post stuff when you feel like it, but don't get wrapped up in posting. Generously comment on other people's posts, which doesn't mean spam a bunch of posts because you're hoping they'll notice you. It means pay attention, take 10 minutes. It doesn't have to take long. 10 minutes, 15. Put it in your calendar. Make an appointment with yourself. LinkedIn time. Scroll through your newsfeed, and when you see somebody's post that you resonate with, comment on it. But when you comment, don't just say, this is great, or I like this, or yay, or whatever. Add something to the conversation. So when I say generously comment, I mean, if you loved it, tell them what you loved and why you loved it. If there's something, always yes and a conversation in the comments. So you could be like, I loved that. And then you can add, and here's why, and here's something I thought of, and continue the conversation for people that they can continue it with you. I think you'll find that when you are generous with your human connection is a gift. We're in a loneliness epidemic. Like, not to bring this down at the very end, but like, we're in a loneliness epidemic. Depending on the studies you look at, 2 out of 3 people feel lonely or isolated on a regular basis, right? Lonely or isolated on a regular basis. In that world, so many of us are nervous to talk to a stranger, to say hi to someone in the coffee shop, to strike up a conversation, to comment that thing on that LinkedIn post that you liked, because we're worried about what people will think of us. But merely reaching out and adding to the conversation, saying hello to a stranger, give other people the gift of connection. In a loneliness epidemic, the most selfish thing you can do is not say anything. The most generous thing you can do is say hello.
I appreciate every single one of you who listen until the end. And if you like what I'm doing here and you find it useful, it will mean the world to me if you can share with a friend or subscribe to YouTube. Thank you so much, and until next week, pura vida!